All right, welcome in, Cowboys fans. We're middle of week 2 now, getting ready for the Giants. And what we're talking about tonight is building off week 1's positives and start building a case that what we saw them do well in week 1 is their new identity. Welcome into How About Wow. I'm Gavin Dawson along with Newbear. Take it away, Jim.
The only thing else I got to say is, how about this, Cowboys? Yeah!
Let's jump right into this, Newbear. Here's Tyler Booker, rookie guard for the Cowboys, talking after practice about his vision for what he wants this team to be here one game into his rookie season.
Yeah, we want to be known as one of the most physical teams in the NFL, and I feel like that only happens with us practicing as hard as we do, coming in with the intentions of being a physical team. Like, that's a part of our identity. That's something that we spoke about earlier, and that's what we want to be known as. So in order to be seen as one of the most physical teams, we have to play like it. And I feel like we played very physical on Thursday. We just have to build upon it this Sunday.
Yeah, Shotty talked about the same thing at his Monday presser. Let me pause that. We'll switch back here to the 2-box. But the identity offensively, I think, took a huge step forward. Short yardage, 2 rushing touchdowns, good run success rate. Javonte Williams proving he is RB1 and he can still absolutely be a handful. So I think what we saw was, hey, maybe Zach Martin was getting a little bit up there long in the tooth, and just getting 3 big, strong dudes in the middle of that offensive line paid immediate dividends in the form of a run game. And I mean, Mike McCarthy and Jason Garrett, for their entire tenures, a combined 14 years, could not make this a physical football team, no matter how hard they tried. And I think Shotty took big steps with one offseason and one game, Newbear.
Yeah, let's also pay respect to the fact that we had the spitting incident, and arguably the best big guy inside in the whole damn league was not on the field.
Fair.
And week 12 is going to be, assuming health and assuming that we're all out there together, butting heads again, one hell of a rematch, because they're going to be jazzed. They're going to be face to face. Hopefully no one's spitting anything in that pregame. And what you said, though, you talk about the 3-1s, you talk about all the Tylers, all the fun stuff, summer of good vibes. And what Booker just talked about there was getting back to work. They talk about the work, the effort, the attitude. And if you remember when he was drafted, this is how he came out swinging. And that's why we were gravitating toward him so much beyond his gravitational pull. I mean, he's a massive man, heavy hands, long arms, everything except for the 40 and the 10-yard split, or he might have been a top 5 pick. I mean, that's how good of a football player this kid is. And for him to talk about getting back to that, one of the things you talk about, rush success rate in the run game, I want to see 20 plus carries for Javonte Williams. I want to see 30 carries. The only thing I want to see more is bleep you balls to Pickens over the top. But where does that come from? Where does the ease of that come from? Getting the run game going, getting the one-on-ones, dictating the coverage, and being able to take those go balls come from, what did I talk about all summer? Being patient, being stubborn, on purpose, with purpose, for a purpose. And what you're talking about is controlling the game and dictating tempo.
Yeah, and if they can do those things in week 2, if they aren't far off from Philly, do you agree or disagree with that? Leave a comment down below. Maybe put a thumbs down if you don't think they're that close to Philly, but I think they are. And they're the defending champs. It was in their building. Granted, didn't have Jalen Carter. That's a point taken. But by the time you get to the end of the season, there's going to be a war of attrition, and who knows who's going to be standing when the calendar flips into January. But where are you compared to the rest of the conference? And I think this game against the Giants and then the Bears next week represents a big opportunity to say, hey, maybe we're not quite as good as Philly yet, but give Shotty 4 more months to cook, and we can see how much. But it's got to be a dominant performance, I think, on both sides of the ball, and I hope they're taking steps in that direction.
And you can't talk about what the Cowboys have invested up front in their offensive line without talking about what the Giants have done with their defensive line, both draft and dollars. And, I've been getting raked over the coals in some of the different places on the socials for going on a Brian Burns, Dexter Lawrence, Abdul Carter misspeak, talking about some of the week 2 matchups. But I was like overgeneralizing who some of the best trios or the best body types and play style types that you're going to see on a down in, down out basis. And what's so interesting about the way the game is played today is that now more than ever, you talk about playing the piano. You talk about swing linemen who can play both sides, guys who can maybe kick inside, or guards who can play center. and all those elements that help keep you around, the same way we talk about quarterbacks holding clipboards and wearing hats for a real long time. Shout out Chase Daniel, maybe the greatest clipboard holder to ever do it. These guys with the Giants, going back to the summer and talking about, the summer of good vibes. You remember when those tweets started going viral where these guys were running stunts in games and you started saying, holy hell, look out when the lights really turn on and these guys are playing at full game speed.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Washington got them in week 1. And Washington does not have a good offensive line on the ground. Even without Jaden Daniels, they were getting a high, run success rate. So if the Cowboys can't do that, I don't know, maybe we saw some fool's gold, and maybe that Jalen Carter point will play a little bit. But this game against the Giants, and we'll talk about other keys to getting the job done, I think holds the keys to what we're going to see for the rest of the season. Dak Prescott has not lost to the Giants since his rookie year. There's been complete dominance against the New York Giants for the Cowboys for the duration of his career. So if that continues, I think we build on that, not moral victory from week 1, but the progress that they showed. And it begins Sunday at noon over at AT&T Stadium. So the identity on the offensive side, I think a lot of it comes down to being able to run the football. Obviously, protecting Dak would be a cherry on top, but I don't actually have a lot of confidence they're going to be able to do that with this offensive line. But looking over onto the defensive side, this might be even a bigger issue for the grand scheme of how far the Cowboys have to go. Can you stop the run? Kenny Clark was the highest graded Cowboy in-house on the defensive side of the football. Here he is talking to reporters after week 1, looking forward to week 2.
I mean, that's the name of the game. I mean, if we can stop guys from running the ball and our offense can keep playing how we playing, we're gonna be able to get up on guys and be able to rush the passer, and late in the games. So that's the goal. We gotta keep on stopping the run, keep getting guys behind the sticks in third and long situations, and just keep playing complementary football.
I love it. I love if you can see right in here.
Yeah,
Kenny Clark's bloody lip. Fully padded practice, took a shot to the chops today. That's Shoddy insisting on physicality. 180 degrees from that is Mike McCarthy, who decided, I'm going to have the easiest practices in the NFL and take it light on my guys so they like me, and maybe we'll be fresher by the time we get to January. That did not work at all. Gave him 5 years to try it.
Hey, at the risk of anybody thinking I want them to all of a sudden start playing Marty ball, let's just not forget that this is Marty Schottenheimer's boy. And you can talk Colin Cowherd all you want about which way you're wearing your visor, but he's the young, cool, still cool, new coach on the block. He's got the red ass from the old man, right? I mean, he's got all that old school stuff. The two Wi-Fi there.
Yeah, I think I lost you a little bit on the Wi-Fi, but we're still rolling, my man. Did you have a point to finish up there? Oh no, sorry. You probably stopped talking and we're like, wait, why aren't you talking?
Yeah, did I get the red ass? Did we talk?
Yeah, you got red ass. You got to get Joker 2 in there. It was good.
Well, so Puka Nacua bleeding from the eye. Football is back, right? Like we're starting to see stuff that you just don't see on a random Tuesday. And when you start talking about how different the game is played, like we were just talking about, with schemes and guys doing things and everything changing after the snap and what you try to do to manipulate it, in the run up to the ball being snapped. What's really fascinating is there's so much less contact during the week and in the preparation, and the players love that, and the coaches bitch about it, and it's a big tug of war. What you like to see is that in those limited opportunities, they really get after it.
Well, what I would tell them, and I go back and forth on this because, I mean, I am so anxious about injuries in non-game situations, but, I guess I'm arguing with myself here a little bit. The last two dynasties, the Patriots and Chiefs, both had the most physical, the most demanding practices. And I think you have to scout and find players that aren't injury prone and then hold your breath and keep your fingers crossed. But I think this is just something that you kind of got to go with and bite the bullet, especially when you're a developing team trying to forge a new identity and a new culture. So for me, this is all a big feather in the cap for Brian Schottenheimer, how much progress they showed in week one. Kenny Clark's freaking bloody lip, the way he's getting aligned for how his old man coached and Belichick and Reed coach. And I think he might end up being the best hire of this coaching cycle in the NFL, Newbear.
Yeah, and he's a hybrid coach, right? He's like a geriatric millennial. Like I talk about living in a world where you understand X and boomers, and you're digital natives, so you kind of get Z and Beta and whatever the hell. Like he's one of those hybrid guys based on his life timeline, and he lived in a world and played in a world and has come up through the ranks coaching in a world and watched that change and developed with it and changed himself. And I think that's one of the points that I want to come back to. And that word, change, we talked a lot about going back through the offseason, the week-to-week nature of how this offense and how the scheme might change based on who you're playing, based on who's available, based on who's got the hot hand. This is going to be one of those games where we get to find out what they truly believe in and where they are right now. Because if Javonte Williams really is, you just said he's clearly RB1. He's really RB1 because Sanders put the ball on the ground. Like Sanders was getting run and he breaks that run and maybe they think he's got the hot hand. You might see him for longer stretches. You might see more of a split. And so that's why I'm talking about being stubborn and being patient and 20 carries for Javonte Williams, because if you're going to come out and say, this is who we are and this is what we're going to hang our hat on, everything else builds off of that. If you're not patient, you're not stubborn, you're rotating backs, is Jaden Blue going to play and all these other things, then we just go through the cycle from week to week based on who's bitch moaning and complaining about targets.
Yeah, and I was wondering in Friday morning and then through the weekend, why didn't they just leave Miles Sanders in Philadelphia when they left after getting snatched and then fumbling? But then early this week, we get the Jaden Blue update that, Shoddy talking about him, and Jerry Jones on the Fan this morning said it's, possible that Jaden Blue and Mozzie Smith are still going to remain inactive. I really think they need Miles Sanders as the leverage to Jaden Blue, or they don't really have a chance of instilling that kind of discipline and accountability that they want to see. But man, they played the champs, they freaking ran it, and they stopped the run, Newbear. I've been harping on this forever. You could go back for 15 years and probably find 2 seasons where the Cowboys kind of put together a decent run defense, but it was more smoke and mirrors and the opposition not having a good run game. But as this running game has really evolved across the NFL over the last 3 or 4 seasons, it's become a blinking red light that this is absolutely how you beat the Cowboys. You might not even have to pass, especially if you have a running quarterback. I mean, Jeff Driscoll beat them 6 or 7 years ago. Not even a good dual threat quarterback, but a guy that had good a ball action and was able to slip the edge so many times. Like, it became an absolute comedy of errors. And to have the success they had in the second half against the Eagles has me believing, especially as we get ready for this game against Russell Wilson. There's still plenty of guys out there. We'll talk about Justin Fields in week 5. That might be a nightmare if you look at what he did to the Steelers defense. And then obviously Jaden Daniels for the Commanders a couple of times. And there's several running quarterbacks out there. We'll have to see, as they continue to meet those challenges. But 1 week in, there's a tremendous amount of progress there. Here, I wanted to show you this box score real quick. This is a rookie, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. I think they could have taken him in the 5th round, but they went with Jaden Blue instead. 10 carries for 82 yards, including a 42-yarder, a touchdown against the Giants. We can talk about this big defensive front that the Giants put out there, and it is damn impressive when you start talking about the Dexter Lawrences of the world and Brian Burns and freaking Kayvon Thibodeau and Abdul Carter sitting on the bench. If you don't run it right at them, you could be in a situation where your tackles in the interior of your line, Tyler Booker is a rookie handling stunts, could be tested.
Well, and this is another place where styles make fights, because you talk about how Jaden Daniels didn't necessarily pop off, but the threat of him doing so and having to account for him is a completely different world than where we're living in with D4K, right? So when you talk about 8.2 yards a carry for the rookie, there's a reason those seams exist. We get a hat on a hat, there's a crease, and he's got the speed to go get into that space. And maybe Javonte Williams isn't that guy, but playing through him allows you the same way that you're going to have to hold Fowler and company from a rush lane integrity accountable. If you're going to talk about accountability and discipline and what it's going to take for Jaden Blue to get on the field, then that has to go both ways. And in order to do that, and in order to be consistent, in order to show up every time and say, this is who we are and this is how we do business, that's got to start from somewhere. It's got to start from someone. And if he's going to be RB1, then let's not have any questions asked about that, so that we know the path to follow. Because right now, Jaden Blue is looking and saying, well, he averaged 3.6 yards a carry. And yes, there's a grain of salt because of the goal line stuff, but he's also saying, I would have scored because Miles Sanders is washed. He's also saying, as Araku's falling down and Fowler's diving into the B gap, and we're letting Jalen Hurts make us look silly. And oh, by the way, Eberflus called a scheme where they were wrong by the math on the pre-snap alignment, regardless of the holding that wasn't called. So, like, you go in through the machinations of these things. You talk about discipline. You talk about consistency. Let's talk about everyone. Let's talk about everything.
I love it. Let's start talking about specifically this game, the things that have to add up to victory. And it's not just winning, but it's showing maybe that you've got a coach and a coaching staff that can beat you with his, or if you give him a little bit of time with yours, you can come back and beat his. Like, this is a potential turning point for the organization. And the idea of, hey, if you get the right coach with the right players, you can have a very quick turnaround. Okay. How about WOW, brought to you by Bet Online. If you're looking for a sports book out there that also has, great casino action, poker games, fastest payouts guaranteed. I've been with Bet Online for a long, long time, and I know you're absolutely going to love it. Best integrity in the world of online wagering. I think it starts with just what we're talking about here. And the Giants offense is putrid. I think they're going to come out with a plan to run the ball against you as much as possible. And they have a couple of pretty good runners. I don't think their offensive line is very good at all, and they're still going to be without Andrew Thomas, from my understanding, from reading the New York papers and looking at their press conferences. So, yeah, I think it starts right there. Let's get 100 yards. Let's hit the century mark, establish Javonte Williams down in and down out, moving the chains with not having to pass the ball. Could we be fortunate enough to get some of that? We could talk about Tyler Guyton and Terrence Steele not being great factors in pass pro, but in the running game, I think they're a strength. So that's where I would start, punishing their ground game. Keep them under 150 yards of total offense, a dominant type of performance to give you confidence going into week 3 against Chicago.
Not just to give a Kentucky guy a shout out, but one of the things that I'm always mindful of is when you have little true slot guys that are running to the sticks and doing the underneath work and getting the tough yards, is I always think about like that one time a game, Wes Welker would hit you with a stick nod and you hit him up the seam and you're like, that's not Rob Gronkowski. That's the little guy tearing us up. Right. And getting downfield. And I'm curious to see if they're going to have Bland follow him and make sure that doesn't happen. And you just keep him in a place where he's got 6 or 7 catches for 9 yards a catch, because that's basically what he's been for his career. And we know that their quarterback play has been suspect, but we also know Russ will throw a moon ball if you get a one-on-one. So to that end, is it Diggs and Neighbors all day? And you just talked about how they're going to be without Andrew Thomas. From what I understand, there are no restrictions on Diggs, and he can go as long as he can go. So
totally clear. Yeah.
I mean, Neighbors is one of those dudes. I mean, we all know what he's capable of. He's been battling a couple of different injuries, one going all the way back to college that is just going to be something he has to deal with pretty much for his whole career, and then some of the tweaks and the bumps and bruises that come with that. But then there's also, I mean, the same way we're talking about George Pickens or Tyreek Hill or any of these guys going Keyshawn Johnson saying, just give me the damn ball. If you're gonna put him in one-on-one situations, it's going to turn into a street fight out there on the edge.
Yeah, I love that. And speaking of the Cowboys offense here, to transition to wide receiver, Newbear, I think one of the things on the surface to talk about is CeeDee Lamb bounce back game. But I have no doubt in my mind, like, CeeDee Lamb could drop 4 passes in a row. I'd be convinced he was going to go snatch the 5th one.
Yeah, that Kobe Bryant next shot, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be, yeah.
So I think with the passing game, it's more about getting George Pickens involved, proving that he can be a weapon, and then hopefully finding a third option in the passing game that's not Jake Ferguson. You know, I like Jake Ferguson. I need something safer, and I don't know if that guy's on the roster right now. This might be a longer term type of deal, but I feel like with Dak Prescott, he likes the middle of the field, but it's got to be a guy with a great feel and hands that he can trust. And then you can see a game like, you know, Cole Beasley used to have 7-8 catches routinely. Dalton Schultz, 10-11 catches. Like, these things can happen, but I think Dak could really, really use, as much as he's got the two playmakers on the outside, and Jake Ferguson's a hell of a weapon. Don't get me wrong, but I think he's more of a big play tight end than that reliable chain mover.
You like Fergie on a big play shot, right? You want to see the stick nod from 87. Yeah. And, you know, Dak took those shots and we just missed. And we talked about the difference in the game of inches, Al Pacino, any given Sunday, piece within inches, and how Jake Ferguson almost got a whole lot of piece on that hospital ball that everyone was raving about. That was, buddy, was that close to being a big time injury. And then you go, okay, well, that's what life in the seam is. So if you're going to take that shot, is it a matter of getting the ball up earlier? Is it a matter of taking a shot over the top to Pickens and forcing Tampa and creating a true seam and a void for him to go exploit so that it's not one-on-one? Because that was one of the things that was interesting about the last ball. And I might have said this or something like this previously, but I think he was long on the fourth down play to CeeDee Lamb because he underthrew, and the balls were right there. I mean, the one went through Spanford's hands. The ball hit Ferguson like in a place where he could have made the catch, would and paid the price. You're going to pay the price anyway. You might as well catch the damn ball. So I think what's really interesting, the same way we're talking about Neighbors and Diggs, or Neighbors and whoever they choose to run with him or rotate throughout the course of the game to try to wear him down a little bit, is coming and circling back to George Pickens and saying, why do we go away from a 30-plus yard penalty? Even if it doesn't count for the fantasy, it changes the game. And he's still involved and happy because he knows the ball is going to come his way. And maybe we don't get a couple of those lazy routes. We get a couple more guys thrown out of the club. And that's how a Javonte Williams is able to break one and take it the distance.
I like that. I like that a lot. I want to ask you about formation here as we continue here on How About Wild, talking about things we want to see against the Giants. I think, you know, relative to what I just said about wide receiver 3, I believe 12 personnel should be a bigger part of the game plan, not only because I like Brevin Spanford and Jake Ferguson and to a lesser extent Schoonmaker, but Schoonmaker coming out of college was supposed to be a good blocking tight end. And I think in this game, especially when you look at Burns, when you look at Thibodeau, and then when you look at Abdul Carter coming off the edge, that could potentially create turnovers, you know, whether that's a forced fumble or a turnover down the field in the form of an interception. I want to see what this coaching staff can do more, just going heavy consistently and becoming that 12 team that runs a lot out of that and then hits play action.
What do you like when you look at this Giants defense at the second and third levels? Like, where, obviously we're talking to me, Abdul Carter is considered an outside linebacker. He's an edge, right? The same way you talk about Thibodeau, but like, Micah McFadden's hurt? And then what is Okereke? Is he 235? It's not like they have a Roquan Smith type big thumper that you really got to worry about, or a bunch of guys that you got to account for, to your point about going 12 and 13 and banging some heads. And then at the same time, if you can put those guys because of a matchup and because of what you're dictating with tempo and personnel, maybe that's how you get Ferguson loose and create some of that space. Even if you don't force them into Tampa 2 because you're just running the ball down their throat, you do force them into more favorable matchups where Fergie's able to use his size, ball placement from Dak, and some of those things where it's not just such a low percentage, not that it was a risky or a turnover worthy play per se, but just it's such a tight window throw. And you've talked at length about how much Dak struggles there. And I've talked at the same time about how part of the reason he struggles there is because he's willing to take that shot. There's a lot of Aaron Rodgers a lot of times won't make that throw. He'll hit his grandmother in the standard, he'll dirt it, and that's part of the reason why he's 1.4% interception percentage and the best to ever do it from that perspective in his career, in addition to all the ball placement, arm talent, and all those things. Dak's willing to take those risks because he knows he can fit it in there. And he also understands that when you hit one of those, what it does for your team, what it dictates to your opponent, and how you can really kind of step on their throat when you have big physical dudes that even when you're in phase, you're still wrong.
Okay, so that's a pretty good breakdown of offensively the things we want to see. when you shift over to the defensive side of the ball, what was the biggest concern for you coming out of Philadelphia?
Probably the least favorite money that was spent this offseason of yours, and it's the Kenneth Murray, Jack Sanborn. How are we playing downhill? Because if other teams, like you talk about Tyrone Tracy, Scattaboo, whatever these guys are going to do, and try to pound, run at you and power and inside and outside zone, and from week to week, so many teams incorporate so many different things. The way we talk about, the Arizona Cardinals run game that came to Dallas, and the multiplicity, the variance within the splits, and that, like, we still don't really know. I mean, Tyrone Tracy had a really good year last year, but is he going to become that dude? And like Scattaboo has those moments and those flashes where you see that toughness translate from Saturday to Sunday. What happens if they get going into a 1-2 punch where you don't expect them to be the guy, and then together they come and really kind of terrify you because they're getting 3 when it's blocked for 3, and then that 3 turns into 4, turns into 5, turns into 6. Not that they're breaking 60 and 80-yard runs and going Saquon Barkley, but just wearing you down to the point where you've got to commit extra guys in the box and leave neighbors out there one-on-one consistently, where you're just kind of playing with fire at length. So Murray had the big play early where I said, you know what, Dawson, not that I want prove you wrong and it's me versus you, or opinion versus opinion, take versus take, but just traits. You want him to play downhill. You want him to play fast. You want him to go take chances and knock other dudes out. And then you just didn't see that again. And to the point where you have to run Sanborn in, because now you're questioning whether he's even doing responsibility role. You go through PFF grades or any of the metrics about how these guys, check out from a week to week basis. What I always look at is, when does the coach go to the backup? When does the DC or the OC have to say, this might not be the most I can get. This might not be my biggest play opportunity, the EPA stuff that, you love to get into, but I just need a dude who's going to be where I tell him to be and where the play call is designed for him to be, so that Fowler doesn't have to feel like he has to take a risk and go crash, because he can just do his job.
Yeah, no, I think those two things play off each other beautifully. And I like that you brought up the linebackers, because I was going to bring up edge contain, really. And, Dante Fowler, the biggest, blinking light as far as who you blame for those. I wonder how the coaching staff is going to adjust here in this game. Now, Russell Wilson in his prime played with at times a below average Seattle offensive line. He had them in contention because of his ability to be mobile and play that RPO game and get the edge out of position. I don't think he's anywhere near the athlete he was, but I think if you do make mistakes, you risk him rolling out and either running for first down still, or taking the big play over the top, as that moon ball that they call it is so damn effective. And when you lose to Russell Wilson, it's often off script plays. So I would say don't cheat, less Fowler. I want more of Marshawn Kneeland, who's really good on the strong side. And I don't know what you do. Is Ezeraku ready? Can he exploit a bad right tackle or left tackle, I guess, and be more consistent than he was in the run game? Can he get some pressure? I would love those things, but I'm really looking for the coaches to put the pieces in place, that, because I mean, Dante Fowler's a 10-year veteran. He is what he is, and he's just never been a good run player because he's hunting the big play constantly. Can't help it.
10.5 sacks gets you 10.5 million is the line of thinking, right? And when you go through that from the first touchdown through how they came out after the weather delay and really shut Saquon down and really just played a much more sound, much more fundamental. It wasn't like they were just running around, making Xbox hit stick type stuff. I mean, they were doing things the right way. They were forcing Hurts to be Jalen Hurts and take Goddard at the sticks and not having AJ Brown didn't have a target till there was like 2 minutes left in the game, right? And Devonta Smith did nothing as well. So when you go through how good they looked, throw the Jalen Carter thing out, and you get where you get to, and the sweat starts flying, and you start, the lactic acid starts building, and you start making plays and bowing your neck and doing what you're supposed to do. You give yourself a chance at the end to be there and to be one drive, one play. Who's going to be that guy who steps up? And if you're looking at the Dallas Cowboys roster and you're looking at the New York Football Giants roster, Dallas for damn sure has more of those guys. What you don't want to see is this be one of those weeks where you let it come down to one of those one score typical, they're getting paid to, Sunday kind of things where, because you saw what happened with Josh Allen last week. Not that Russ is Josh Allen, but I'm just saying, like, anything can happen as long as there's time on the clock. If you can put the ball on the turf, you can have a million different things, from penalties that actually do get called when guys are holding, and Russ goes to squirt through or spins out and goes out the back door and gives you one of those vintage Russ moments. I actually wonder if it behooves them, to your point about Nealon and company, less about Fowler taking chances and more about keeping Russ in the pocket, because he doesn't have that. He was a game-breaking guy. I mean, he was doing, and he was in the class when you look at rushing yards per attempt. And some of the things that we talk about, Michael Vick, Lamar Jackson, like Russ is on those lists. I think people forget how special of an athlete he was. And, the baseball stuff, he gets a lot of shit for. But I mean, this is a guy he's a professional athlete in 2 sports. He's a really talented athlete. He's also like 5'8". And when you take away the escapability, and you see, remember the old Drew Brees highlights where he'd be looking through the top of his helmet trying to see over guys. If you can keep Russ in that was what was really tough for him in Pittsburgh last year, was when you made it hard for him to see, quite literally, then he takes sacks. And when he takes sacks, then that derails. Forget Malik Neighbor and throw people over the top. Let him catch a ball for 20 yards if it's 3rd and 25. Who cares?
Yeah. No, you're on it. Exactly. Keep him in that phone booth. You keep him in that phone booth. He can't see over the offensive line. And we saw against Washington, he just got to lay down. So you keep containing. I think it's a big opportunity. I mentioned Ezeraku, but how about Sam Williams, who's currently listed as the starter at left defensive end in his 4th season already, I think, after the injury year. But then James Houston as well, who was awesome in training camp and preseason. I think he only had 8 snaps. He had the big play stopping Saquon Barkley, shooting the B gap there between tackle and guard. So I think there's plenty of opportunity here. There's plenty of resources to go around. As you mentioned, Trayvon Diggs is back. Malik Hooker's toe is not hurting, too much. He just had to miss a little mini practice on Monday, but he's good to go. We need this secondary. Here's where I'm going. We need this secondary to prove that it can be a takeaway defense. As much as we can talk about scheme and guys stepping up, I don't think you're going to have good linebacker play all year long. I think that's going to be frustrating. Your edges are developing, but when they get pressure, if a ball is in danger, we need to see that Bland and Diggs combination. I mean, they both are record-breaking takeaway artists, and they have incredible ball skills. Deron Bland, an offensive player into college, and Trayvon Diggs famously made the transition at Bama from wide receiver to corner. And it was glorious in 2021 and then 2022 or 2023, what they were able to do, quickly turning things around. And you can be an average defense and win big in the NFL, even in the playoffs, but you have to make up for it. And it's almost always with takeaways.
For all the wants and warts and the people who just don't and never have, Ben Russell Wilson stands, he takes sacks. And a big part of that is he doesn't make turnovers. He doesn't throw picks. He's like 1.8 for his career. I mean, he's one of the best when you look at it over time as well. And I really, really wonder how much rope Dable has left. I wonder if he's curling up into the fetal position and succumbing to the phone booth and not being able to put a quarter in and make a collect call crying out for help, then could we see Jackson Dart in week 2?
I don't know. So here's what I got on that. I don't think Jackson Dart's going to help the Giants win. This would be a developmental move for coaches that are basically in lame duck situations. I think if you're going to move to Jackson Dart this early, what you risk is then going back to Russ or going to Jameis Winston, and then it looks like a game of musical chairs at quarterback. It's a disaster, and toxicity is going to be flying all over that building. So I think this is something that Daboll will probably slow roll and maybe wait till we're 3 or 4 games be under 500 and have no chance of the playoffs as a last ditch to convince the front office and the ownership group, hey, stick with me. I got something cooking here with Jackson Dart. But I don't think they're going to go there because, I mean, you put You put rookie behind this line. Maybe when Andrew Thomas gets healthy, their best offensive lineman, but you put rookie behind this, you might go scoreless in week 2 against the Cowboys.
Yeah, the one thing about Dart is that he can still move, and he made a lot of hay in college doing that, and he looked just as athletic as you thought he was going to in the preseason. Obviously, it's different when you get to the regular season, just like there's that new speed when you get to the playoffs. It's fascinating for me to think about this great point about the offensive lineman coming back and being able to have as much as you can to protect a young man. You know, I've joked all off season about just because he's got the best clips. I mean, he's a preacher. He's got a second career at any church in the country. You know, Jameis Winston pregame is maybe better than Ray Lewis. And you go through thinking about catching Jameis Winston and Malik Neighbors on a heater because you know Jameis Winston's just going to throw that. He just doesn't care. He's Brett Favre like that, right? And
yeah, that'd be the move, I think.
See, what is he? Winston's the only guy in modern NFL history to throw 30 touchdowns and 30 picks in the same season, right? He
Unbelievable.
5,000 yards.
Yeah. So, and I mean, the ultimate team first play to just stay in there and keep throwing it.
Yeah.
Like there were years where Eli Manning was towards the end of his career that he was like, I'm not throwing 30 picks this year. Okay. As soon as I get pressure, I'm throwing the ball out of bounds.
Yeah. Eli's the New Jersey Mike's commercial is pretty funny. But as we think about, you know, coming into week 2 and talking about all off season, whatever happened opening night, week 2 for me was going to be the litmus test of what this team really is and what functionally we're going to get out of them from week to week. Because if this is a 10-11 win challenge for the East playoff team, you got to go handle this business.
All right. Please, if you made it this far, consider hitting the like button, subscribe so you don't miss any of our uploads or when we go live. How About Wow brought to you by Bet Online, up to $250 in bonus bets if you sign up with the link in the description. We'll be back later this week with a more detailed preview and an update on all the headlines around Cowboys Giants week 2. And until then, how about wow?